Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of our Imagine Antarctica webinar. Thank you all for joining us today with a cup of coffee to talk about the seventh continent. My name is Renato Marin, and I am the Market Engagement Manager here at Antarctica 21. And today I will be your host. For everyone who registered but couldn't attend today, don't worry, because we will be sending the recorded webcast later today in an email to you. For those of you who made it and are joining us today, we will be giving away a book called The Continent of Antarctica by Michael Hambry. It's a mix, great information about Antarctica and also awesome pictures. And we will be announcing the winner of that book at the end of this webinar. Also, I want to remind you about our feature title certificate that you can sign up on our website. This discount will give you a 20% reduction on selected departures for this coming up season, and you can register for that on our website. Don't forget to do that. That being said, I want to give you a small introduction on who we are and what we do. We are Antarctica 21. We offer boutique-style wilderness expeditions in Antarctica on small ships. Also today on the call, we have two of our more seasoned and travel to Antarctica colleagues. Mariano Curiel, Director of Expedition Operations, and Reyno Daniels, Market Manager for the USA and Canada. So between the two of them, they have over 200 trips to Antarctica. So they are really the people you want to talk about. You want to talk about the seventh continent. Just so you know, today we're doing this webinar remotely, obviously, from Chile, Canada, and Argentina. So if there's any lagging in the connection, I apologize in advance. It's probably because of that. And without further ado, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So why don't you go ahead, Mariano?
Yeah, thank you, Renato. And hey, Renato. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Mariano. I am one of the expedition guides in Antarctica 21, as well as Director of Expedition Operations. I've been working with A21 for the last 10 years in Antarctica, specializing mainly on the flight cruise, but in Antarctica over the last 17 years, spending every summer there. And I headed south in 2003, fell in love with the place, wanted to become a guide, an expedition guide, and then I couldn't stop going back. I'm looking forward to the next time I head south.
Well, thank you, Mariano, for your introduction. And how about you, Reyno? How did you get involved with Antarctica in the first place?
Hi, good morning, Renato and Mariano. Good to see the two of you again, and I'd like to welcome everyone else on the webinar today. I'm here in Squamish, British Columbia, and I got into the industry in the mid-90s. I had an opportunity to travel to Antarctica in the 2002-2003 season. And that trip really impacted me on many levels. And from there, I dedicated my career to expedition cruising and various marketing roles, sales roles, even operational roles, logistics, and it really took off from there. And so it's been a few years, and I have worked for a couple expedition cruise companies since. And I've just joined the Antarctica 21 team as of last year, and now focused on the US and Canada market as market manager.
And we're happy to have you on board right now.
Hey,
well, thank you guys for your introductions. And just so you know, today the idea behind this webinar is to have both of them answer all the questions that we normally get asked about Antarctica. So if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A box that you can see, and I think it depends on how you have it configured, either on the bottom or the top of your screen. And we will answer them at the end of the presentation, and if we cannot answer them due to time circumstances, we will follow up them in the email that I told you about. So let's begin with Reyno. So can you tell me who goes to Antarctica? Like, who wants to go to this cold and distant place?
I love the question. And it's a good question. I remember my friends back in 2002, when I had mentioned to them, I had opportunities to travel the world, and I had mentioned to friends that I was traveling to Antarctica. And of course, at the time I was living in Edmonton, and it was -35. It was a harsh winter, and my friends scratching their heads going, Why Antarctic? And I'm glad I didn't listen to the friends, and I did go. But this here, I love this slide because this is a great representation of who travels with us. We get small groups of 70, 75 passengers on board each of one of 3 vessels. And as you can see here, it's a nice mix. Last year alone, we recorded 47 different nationalities that have traveled with us. Wow. Now, our trips are English speaking, but we do get a diverse background of clients that travel from diversity of occupations and background. So it makes for a very interesting conversation with folks on board over dinner or drinks.
And I'm sure the reasons are also very, varied, right?
Reasons to travel?
Exactly.
Yeah, reasons to travel is, it's Antarctica for many is the 7th continent. And of course, I was the same, I was ticking some boxes and of course for me, that was the last continent for me as well. But there's also other reasons, there's reason to celebrate, not only to visit this amazing destination, but also to celebrate big moments in life, whether it's retirement, whether it's a milestone birthday, whether it's a graduation, for instance, or maybe it's an anniversary, like these 2 folks here that celebrated the 30th with us this past season, or maybe it's an anniversary or an engagement as well, and occasionally we even host a couple weddings on board throughout the season.
That's quite the occasion and quite the trip as well.
That's right.
And what about families? I know that families also like to travel together.
They do. Yeah, families do like to have these adventures together. And of course, traveling with us is no exception. I have seen a shift in trends over the last decade where we start seeing more and more families and also multi-generational families. We'll have grandparents taking their children and also even their grandchildren. So not only do we have a diversity of backgrounds and nationalities on board, but we also have a diversity of age throughout. We have children as young as 8 occasionally on board, and some more of our seasoned travelers into their 90s, well into their 90s.
So it's not a limit on age.
Absolutely not. No, very like-minded people that are traveling, and we all have this sense of adventure, and of course, we get to share that with each other in this amazing destination.
Well, and now that you mentioned that, nowadays, people like to travel alone, or sometimes, they want to bring someone else, but due to life circumstances, you have to go if you want to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what can you tell me about how we cater to solo travelers? What options do they have? I mean, sometimes you traveling alone, you meet more people.
Yeah, I early in my career, I had this amazing opportunities to travel frequently. And of course, my friends weren't always in the same situation. So quite often I would travel alone. And although I had fantastic flexibility and freedom and backpacking, it can be lonely at times. And some of my more memorable travel experiences were on trips, whether it was in a group setting. And even though it was a small group setting, I always found that there was also other single travelers joining those trips. And I think that's what's so wonderful about traveling with us on a small ship with a small group, is that you are meeting other like-minded people, but you're also meeting other single travelers. And even though you feel like you might be alone, I can guarantee you that once you leave, you are forming these lifelong bonds and friendships with people on board. And I think that's what makes it really so special. And of course, we do cater for solo travelers in terms of options and booking options. If you do want your own cabin, of course, there's that opportunity. But if you're interested and you're able to, we can put you in a share basis with another single traveler. So there's a couple options there available for those wanting to travel.
Well, that's good to know. That's really good to know. Well, and like you mentioned, it's really a wide array of people, different ages, backgrounds that go to Antarctica. So it's really something, to consider for everyone interested in going.
That's right.
Thank you, Reina, for all that input. And now, Mariano, let's start with you. This is something I want to ask you about, and maybe, Reina, you can also weigh in, since you've both been to a lot of places in Antarctica. Sure. And when people think of Antarctica, probably the first things that come to mind, are icebergs, snow, cold seas, and penguins too. But there are actual places that we visit with our trips when we are down there. So could you tell me which ones are the most likely that we'll visit during our expeditions there?
Yeah, Renato, I think my connection is not great today. So if I go frozen, maybe you, Renato, you can take over.
No problem.
Yeah, let's go into our trips about the experience. We go to the next slide. We can see a map of the area. We can see South America and the Antarctic Peninsula. So our area of expertise, we put most of our action is the Antarctic Peninsula, the white sticky finger pointing up in the map. South America is above that. That said, I'm being fly and cruise our main core operation. We also sail from South America in a few trips, sailing from Ushuaia, from Port Williams, from Falklands, and from Punta Arenas, and we sail to the South George Islands, Falkland Islands, and in the Southern Ocean as well. So it's a bit of a mix. But the Antarctic Peninsula is our greatest area of action. And then how do we do it? We fly down or sail down, and then once we're on our ships down in Antarctica, we go out and explore. On the next slide, we will see a classic day in Antarctica, basically. This is the landscape of the Antarctic Peninsula. High peaks, high mountains right next to the sea, to the ocean. You can see the frozen ocean right there, ice on the water. But what is really good, what we like about this experience is this slide is not only that, it means also that the experience starts once you get to the ship. Once you get to Antarctica, once you get on board, the exploration starts, that the experience begins. And we will spend a lot of time cruising with the ships. We don't need to be out to get that feeling, looking out the window, being out on deck, enjoying at the same time the comfort of our vessels. It's part of the experience. So it's a great viewpoint and great area to explore Antarctica from the ships already. Once in this slide, for example, it's the Mer Channel. I like to emphasize that we don't have places that we usually go. This is an example of one of the channels that we can cruise, but we basically take the opportunity based on conditions, ice, weather patterns, and it's an expedition. We wake up and we have a plan, but it might change. We'll see where we can go. Mm-hmm. Once we leave the ships, we usually do those small boats. You can see it on the screen, a small Zodiac approaching the shore. And that's how we do it. We send our expedition team first to check on the site, and then we will announce it. Everybody gets on the boats and we go to shore. Here you can see penguins on the ground. You see our guests, the guides with the yellow jackets. In this case, Port LaCroix, it's an example of a station visit. We like to offer variety, so we might go and find penguin rookeries. We will go and find channels and ice, but also if we can, we like to visit a station because it's quite interesting to meet the people that spend the summer or the winter in Antarctica and be able to talk to them, to the scientists, and to understand what they're doing there. Also, it's a great place. Sometimes we can buy souvenirs and send postcards from Antarctica back to our houses. A different type of landing could be this one, like Paradise Bay. This is a 7th continent landing, so you get to set foot on the continent, on the mainland. You can see the ship right at the back, it's a floating lodge. And again, always options and experience. You can go and take a strong hike with a mountain guide to the viewpoint, to the peak there, or you can stay closer to the shore to have a different experience. But we have a lot of stuff. We have guides, they're specialists in mountaineering or snowshoeing, also kayaking, and all the logistics on shore, and also all the presenters that are, or lecturers that are specialized in the area and the geography, the wildlife of the area. There's always a lot of options, a high ratio of staff to guides, staff to guests, so 17 guests to 14 staff, small groups, and basically a lot of options we like to allow in our landings. That's
awesome. And maybe, Reno, maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on what Mariano just mentioned about of our snowshoeing and sea kayaking activities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so on these excursions, we will typically do 2 excursions a day, and 2 to 3 hours is what we do. And on a landing site, there is a lot of flexibility. And I think also important to recognize is that there are a lot of stringent rules on what you can or cannot do in Antarctica. And one of those is, of course, is the number of passengers on shore. But because we're well within that number, we have that flexibility. So there's always walking opportunities and things like that. And of course, just sitting and enjoying the view. but we do also have two programs that are extensions or a bit more involved. And one of those is that hiking and snowshoeing program. It's small groups, 12 to 14 is typical, the maximum group size for this. And we offer this on board as an add-on. There is an extra cost, but we do take a mountain guide and we get away from the landing sites and further afield, which is, especially for early season, great opportunities for snowshoeing. As things start to melt, of course, there's a great opportunities for some hiking as well later in the season. I think another great option is the kayaking program. This is a maximum group size of 10, and we have a fleet of double sea kayaks on board. And now this has to be pre-booked, and it has to be pre-booked prior to arrival. It is something that does sell out. So it's important that if this is interesting to you, to do it well in advance. And what is involved? So during those excursions, there will be an opportunity to kayak if the conditions allow for it. And we provide all the gear. We provide, the wetsuits and of course a kayak guide and a support Zodiac. And this is an excellent opportunity to really get away from, the other Zodiacs or the sound of the engine and the ship. And there's really no experience in Antarctic like gliding across the water, and especially when there's some wildlife close. It's one of those life bucket or adventures that I think I would highly recommend if you have the opportunity.
Well, perfect. Thank you, Reina. And now continuing with Mariano, I wanted to ask you more about Zodiac cruising. I know that regarding your position, you've probably done this a lot. So what can you tell me about this?
Yes, well, the boats, we saw in the previous frames how we get the shore using the boats, the Zodiacs, but it's one of the highlights usually on the trip is when we get on the boats and go out Zodiac cruising. And basically what it means that we get everyone in the group, all of the 70 guests on 7-8 boats, and we go out and explore. We don't go to shore. We take the boats cruising between icebergs and sea ice, and hopefully we find some wildlife. We might come across seals, penguins on the ice, maybe whales. But it's usually for the expedition guides one of the favorite moments, and it's certainly a highlight for the trip. People take a lot of good memories from that. So Zodiac cruising is amazing. And then back to office. I think Renato, you were interested in this one.
Yeah. Because we also go inside the water, not only above the water, right?
It's something that we like to offer. We don't force people to do it, of course. The water is very cold. We have Deception Island. It's quite a famous island in the area of the Antarctic Peninsula and the South Shetlands. That is an active volcano. We sail with the ship inside the caldera, and that provides a thermal activity. However, it's usually not as hot as you expect. We're in Antarctica, and it means that it's a little bit warmer than the water outside. But it's a great experience. Many take it. Many are interested in going for a swim. We do it from Deception. Sometimes we do it from ships. Further south, we try to offer that experience as well to whoever wants to join. And usually it's fun, not only for the swimmers, but also for everyone else watching their faces when they come out.
Of course. Definitely something to do.
It's a very deceiving photo, in my opinion. It's one of those once in a lifetime events as well. For me, it was once, and that was plenty. It's chilly.
They look too happy.
But a great experience.
Yeah. Well, and there is also time to unwind from all these activities that we do both on board and off board, right?
Absolutely, and we try to recommend that on every single trip. We know that there's a lot of excitement around the trip, a lot of excitement during the first days. We get down to the shore, we see a penguin, we take 1,000 photos of that penguin, but then there's more to the trip. And our mission, this is what we speak with our guides in Antarctica 21, is to connect the person to the place. And a great way to do that, and I think it's a great experience also to highlight that people will take home that memory of find a place on your own, sit down, we're going to keep it safe, we're going to keep an eye on you, but you're going to be able to go and find your place in Antarctica, sit down and really contemplate and get that feeling or thinking of where you are at that moment. Look at the globe, you are sitting down in Antarctica, the next civilization, it's way far away. So it's a great way to bring down the trip to the moment, and it's always an option for that as well.
Just take it all in. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mariana, for all that wonderful insight. Now, I want to go back to Reno and ask you something.
Mhm.
I know that probably as a market manager for the USA and Canada, you get this question asked a lot. I know that I do. And so when is the best time to go to Antarctica? When do you go?
It's a great question, and yes, it's one of the top questions I do receive. I've had the opportunity to travel in each of the months, and the Antarctic season, it's a short one. It runs basically from November to end of March and into early April. And I think there's no real easy answer because there is no right answer. There isn't a better time. It really depends on what some of your expectations are, and because every month is so very different. And I'll just go through some of the months here just to give you an idea of what to expect. And so early season for me is one of my favorite seasons to travel. So November, for instance, there's a lot of snow, there's a lot of ice. It's very pristine, it's very clean. You know, a lot of the landing sites and the nesting sites aren't fully established quite yet. So you do get that experience with that pristine conditions, which is really wonderful, especially if you're into photography and especially if you're into landscape photography. But that early season, we start seeing the penguins coming, and they're arriving, of course, and they're building nests, and they're establishing these sites, and they're laying eggs, and we start seeing that develop. Whales are also starting to arrive on the peninsula, and they're there to feed. They're on a mission, so there are opportunities to catch those glimpses of whales. Seals as well on the ice floe. So during those moments, as Mariana mentioned with the Zodiac cruising, excellent opportunity for that. Now into December, the snow melt is continuing, and towards the end of the month, we can start seeing some hatching. We can start seeing the hatching of some of these chicks, which is a very exciting time for obvious reasons. And of course, seeing these chicks is incredibly adorable. And then by January, knowing my months here, January is really the peak of the summer. And this is the height of the Antarctic summer. And because it's such a short cycle, things are speeding up pretty quickly here. Of course, there's more of a melt, so the landing sites are starting to become a bit more muddy and mucky. But also there's chicks that have hatched in December. By early January, mid-January, it's fully taken place. And they really start putting on a lot of weight very quickly. So the landing sites are very chaotic. Of course, you have the adults that are very busy feeding the chicks, but it also brings in the various prey species of seabirds that are taking their own opportunity to feed on some of these chicks. So for a wildlife photographer, it's a fantastic time of year. Do keep in mind that the lighting at that time of year is a little bit more harsh. We can experience 24 hours of sun and can be quite harsh. So just keep that in mind. And then by February, this is now towards the tail end of summer. Now these chicks are really fattening up, and towards the end of February, we can start seeing them molting. We start seeing them lose that very cute fluffiness. And that's a very interesting time as well, in my opinion, in that they're taking to the water for the first time. And, these young chicks are not quite as majestic or as graceful as their parents, porpoising through the water. And they haven't quite figured it out yet on many levels. They're not quite sure how to swim. So it's very comical watching them flip and flopping on the water. And occasionally they'll play in the prop wash of our Zodiacs. They're very playful. And then others are just kind of standing on the shore, just scratching themselves thinking, well, what now? The parents are off feeding. And so it does bring in prey species like leopard seals. So we tend to get higher concentrations there. Now into March, this is now really the end of the Antarctic summer season for many operators. And this is one of my favorite times as well, and for a couple of reasons. One is, as you can see here in the photo, is just the lighting. We call it like the golden hours, the month of March, and because you get these amazing sunsets that will last a couple hours. So just imagine the landscape of tremendous amounts of glaciers and snow and ice, and it's covered by the golds and reds of these sunsets that will just keep going on and on, including sunrises. March is also an excellent time if you're very interested in seeing whales, because whales, as they have come through the season, they're busy feeding, and now they're well fed. So they're very, very relaxed. They're much more relaxed this time of year. So they're spending more time resting and logging, sleeping just underneath the surface. And they're very inquisitive. So they spend a lot of time interacting with each other, but also us. So we can see high concentrations of whales that time of year.
Well, thanks, Reno, for that very useful information on, what to see depending on your expectations and the month that you want to travel. And now diving deeper into wildlife, I know we've seen a lot of penguins so far, in particular this one, the Gentoo penguin that we can see in this slide. But there's also more wildlife that we will see down there. So maybe Mariana, you could tell us more about what we can expect to see when we go to Antarctica.
Yes, absolutely. So wildlife in Antarctica in general, it reflects the continent. It's very peaceful wildlife. Very we have, if you remember when I started talking about different type of trips, when we sail from South America or the Falklands or South Georgia and all those trips sailing around the Southern Ocean, we find the magnificent albatrosses and petrels, the pelagic birds of the Southern Ocean. These birds, they glide in the wind. Basically, they need strong winds to fly. They don't use their wings too much. They glide, and they're just fantastic to watch. The one on the screen is black-browed albatross, for example. And I think that the wingspan of that animal is 2.5 meters times 3 in feet, roughly. So you can go, when you finish this, go and get a line on your house and get an idea. 3.5 meters, over almost 10 feet, is or maybe more than that, it's the largest, the wandering albatross. We get to see different type of albatrosses, wandering, royals, black-browed, gray-headed. That's all in the Southern Ocean, same as petrels. So it's quite interesting. Then once we get down to Antarctica, the wildlife changes a little bit, and we get, if we're talking about birds, we have the Antarctic terns, we have the Arctic terns, the cousins that they fly all the way from the Arctic down to Antarctica every summer. And so they fly from Greenland, from Svalbard, all the way down to Antarctica. I think that these birds, for example, the Arctic terns, the cousins, in their life, they do a trip to the moon 3 times in all the mileage they cover by flying down to Antarctica every year. Beautiful birds. We see them hunting, diving in the water, trying to get like this one krill. So it's beautiful bird life in the area. The skuas, if we talked about birds, they get a really bad publicity because they are the ones attacking penguin colonies, trying to find the eggs or the chicks. But these are very smart birds, falcon-looking birds. They will coordinate attacks. They actually, when they do the attack, they do it between 2 or 3, and they will try to. One will go and distract the penguin. The other one will come behind, very coordinated to try to steal the eggs. So they're very interesting birds to watch, and they are everywhere. All this wildlife, most of it is endemic to the area, to the Antarctic. So we don't find it in many other places except for the ones that visit from the north, like the Wilson petrel, stone petrel, the Arctic tern. If we go to penguins, that's the one thing we can guarantee, and we love penguins. They are such amazing creatures. In the Antarctic Peninsula, we mainly see Gentoo penguins, like the one on the screen. We also see Adelie and chinstraps. Those are the brush-tailed penguins. They have a similar breeding cycle, so Adelie might be a little bit faster, but we'll see the whole cycle over the summer. So as Renaud was saying, you see them building the nest when we start operations in November, and then you see the end result, the chicks going out at sea at the end of the summer, and starting their adult life pretty much. It's the whole cycle, and the experience with penguins is just amazing. They look like little humans. The way they move, the way they look at you, they are special animals. I think everybody falls in love with penguins at first sight.
Oh, Mariana, I think, I don't know if you mentioned before, but we have strict guidelines not to approach the wildlife, but sometimes they do approach us, like in this picture that you can see a tripod next to the penguins. What do we do? We
do have strict guidelines, and one of the key things that I think we like to share with everyone is that A21 and basically every operator in Antarctica, we follow guidelines to keep Antarctica pristine. We don't want to interfere with wildlife, so we have restrictions in that, and we want to leave the place the same as we find it. We want Antarctica to be seen by our grandchildren. With wildlife, in respective to that, we have one of the basic rules is we don't approach more than 5 meters to wildlife, sometimes small, but they don't have that rule. So if they want to approach and take you out, and that will depend probably on your your ways of moving around, but if you stay seated, sometimes they come and check you out, and they can do it. And like looking at the tripod there for cameras, it's always a great chance for wildlife photography in Antarctica. different wildlife that we can find. We can find seals, the Antarctic seals, three different types mainly. The crab eaters we see on the screen. We have weddell seals and leopard seals. They are all around the peninsula, the Antarctic Peninsula, the area we have actions. And different seals. The weddell, for example, is the only one spending the winter in Antarctica. Very cute little seal. The crab eater, they're always in big numbers. They will go out in big numbers, and they're quite aggressive seals between them. And they will be there. We usually find them on the sea ice, on the floes, sometimes on the icebergs. And then we also have the leopard seal. In this case, this one is a very different seal, very powerful one, top of the food chain. I could probably say that is my favorite animal in Antarctica. You can see that those big flippers, the big strong shoulders, strong neck, super big jaw, and they are hunters. They are lonely hunters. It's the equivalent to the polar bear in the Arctic. This would be the leopard seal in the south. So it's lonely hunters. They're not afraid of anything. They probably don't know fear, and very inquisitive, very curious seal. So sometimes they come, if we're on the boats or floating around, they will come around, check us out, and display some behavior, and they go away. Of course, wildlife is unpredictable. We can never count on that, but they are in the area, and it's a very interesting
They're
seal,
the locals.
the leopard seal. Yeah. And then in the summer, we have the big wildlife that heads out, the whales. Most of them, pelagic whales, they go and feed in Antarctica in the summer, and they spend the rest of the year in more temperate waters. But there's also some local wildlife that stays longer in Antarctica. So what we can see in our trips, and again, wildlife is 100% unpredictable. They will be wherever they want. There's nowhere that we can predict that. But we have minke whales, Antarctic minke whales, beautiful, fast, small whales, hard to find, hard to spot. But we can say that we see them from the ship quite often because we have spotters on the bridge all the time. We want to find the wildlife. And if you come to join our trips, we'll ask you to do the same. The more eyes we have out there to find wildlife, the more chances we have. Orcas, we might come across them. I remember that day, this photo was taken south of Trinity Island, and we spotted some splash in the water out in the distance, and we repositioned the ship to get closer. We came across a pod of orcas hunting a minke whale. If you look closer to the screen, the orca on the right has a piece of a whale in its mouth. So that was quite a unique encounter, but it's all there. It's real wildlife, and it's up to us to try to do our best to find those experiences. So orcas could be a chance. They're hard to find, but there's also always a chance for that. And then the larger whales, the humpback whale. We also have sei whales, fin whales approaching the area. They start to show up in November, very little, and then December, January, February, they are there. March, they're very playful, as Renaud mentioned before. They head down to feed. So first, they are very focused on that. They want to feed, and we might see some impressive behavior: the bubble net feeding, feed launching, a lot of different type of feeding from the whales. But by the end, they are quite relaxed, and we might have more chances to have a closer experience. So we see the whales from the ship, sometimes from the boat, so they're cruising, and that's something that we always want to. Impossible to guarantee, but we try to get it. So humpback whales is the other type of wildlife that we find in the area, together with the other big whales.
Well, I just want to mention, like you said, that these pictures, they were actually taken during our trips. So even if it's, we cannot guarantee that you'll see these animals, you can see that it's possible. And now moving forward, this is one of my favorite things that we do in Antarctica 21, the Citizen Science Program. But
yes,
what does that mean for people on board Mariana?
I'm so happy we are able to do this. We started with the Citizen Science programs officially 2 years ago, but since I've been to the company, I've always been interested in supporting science, and we used to support single scientists with things, but now we have a full program every summer. It might vary year to year, but basically what we have is that everyone on the trip, all our guests are able to join hands-on and to support science from Antarctica. So it's we always like to think that we're not only tourists there, we go there and we learn about the place, we explore Antarctica, we go to places that nobody's been before, but basically learning to get to know the place. And now we can take that extra step and we can contribute to science to in the future protect Antarctica as well. So if you think about A21, we have 3 ships sailing around Antarctica all the summer, and we sail to more places, and we cover more ground than any scientist can dream of, to collect samples, to collect data. So we do that. We collect the data, we collect samples, like in the screen here. They're taking samples of the water column, and that's sent to different universities around the world, to different science research programs, and that's ongoing science, and it feels very unique to be able to take part of that and to be the one taking the samples, making notes, and knowing that would go then to the scientific community, and it will develop papers and research, and it's just great. I'm so happy we do that and we can offer that.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Mariano, for all these beautiful, in-depth information about wildlife and also our citizen science program. And now, kind of to round up, I know that probably most of you at this point, are already, checking availability, trying to make a trip happen. I know I would. But I would like to tell you more about us and what may make us different from, different operators in Antarctica. And maybe, Reno, you could help me out here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Antarctica 21 started 16 years ago, and it was a group of friends in Punta Arenas. They're a group of businessmen that wanted to travel to the Antarctic. And that time, the only way to get to Antarctica, of course, was to sail the Drake Passage. And, I've sailed the Drake Passage numerous times, and, that's a good 2.5 days of sailing each direction. So about 5 days sailing on a kind of a classic sailing itinerary. Mm-hmm. Now, these folks got together, they chartered an aircraft and they flew to King George Island, and from there they picked up the ship, and they, with a group of friends, sailed the peninsula, came back and back to Punta Arenas, and from there a business was born. They saw a huge untapped market in creating the fly cruise concept for Antarctic. That was 16 years ago, and of course since then we've really advanced and developed our sails, and now running 3 ships, as we mentioned earlier. And our main focus, even to this day, really is still that fly cruise model. But we have added a few different itineraries to provide some depth within the offerings. And right now, if you're looking at Antarctic Peninsula itineraries, there's really 3 to choose from. And the more popular one is the classic Antarctic Air Cruise, which is a 7-night itinerary. And from there, we have an extension of that, which is an additional 2 nights on board. And that is a Polar Circle Air Cruise, which is a 9-night itinerary. So spending a little bit more time, but also venturing further south. The ultimate goal, of course, is crossing that circle. Now, if you're limited time or perhaps budget, we do have 5-night Antarctic Express itineraries as well. Now, if you have time and you want to explore a little further as well, I would certainly encourage you to look at itineraries that also include the Falkland Islands and South Georgia. South Georgia, to me, is really kind of the jewel in the crown. And we do have itineraries that will do combinations, either with the peninsula or with all 3, Falkland, South Georgia, Antarctic. And those will vary from 14 nights all the way up to 18 or 19 nights. So lots of choices now to offer.
Well, and I think you wanted to talk more about, the model that we pioneered, right?
Yeah. So I mentioned getting to the ship by aircraft, and again, our focus is to spend all of our time in destination, to really make the most of the time, to make your time there. And in order to get there, of course, you need a flight. And we have partnered up with DAP Airlines. DAP Airlines is the only airline that services King George Island. And DAP Airlines, the owner of DAP Airlines, also happens to be one of the 9, the group that started and owned Antarctica 21. So, which is fantastic, because that gives us absolute priority with our flights. And we're only operating 1 flight, which is also good in that we're all traveling together. And the flight is 2 hours. It's done in comfort. So when you leave Punta Arenas and by the time you touch down in King George Island, we're ready to go. It's a short walk down to the beach, and from there we load the Zodiacs and off we go. Now the aircraft here that you see here, this is a BAE 146. They also have some RJ90s that are used, and they're purpose built. And we're flying and landing on all sorts of varying conditions, from snow and ice, mud, and occasionally hard packed dirt. And these aircraft are certainly built to operate in those conditions.
Awesome. Well, now that we know what makes us different in our model, I would like to, finish up with our ships. And maybe Mariano, you could help me out telling the difference between our ships.
Yes, I will continue with the line that Renault started, thinking that we are small groups. That's one thing that our H1 didn't change at all, even with all the growth in the years. We take 70 to 75 guests in one plane, in one ship, and we take that down to the operation as well. So our ships are small operational vessels. The Ocean Nova, for example, it's been operating with the company for the last 10 years, same as me. We actually started together with A21, and it's a very strong Danish-built ship built for purpose. It was built for operating in Greenland back in the day for the Danish government. Very simple, but with Ocean Nova, it's agile, and this is something that we translated later to our other ships. It's agile. We can change plans. We can take advantage of whatever Antarctica offers in that day, and we're being strong, pushing through the ice, being agile, maneuverable. We can always go a little bit further than other ships can do, bigger ships can do. That's one of the key things for our operation, and Ocean Nova is just a great piece. If you want a simple experience, very Antarctic, mainly focus on the outdoors or on the outside, Ocean Nova is the right ship for you. We've been operating Hebridean Sky for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. Again, small ship. This one, the difference is that it's built for 105 guests, but we take 72, I think. So you feel that extra space on the ship, and it's a bit more luxurious. It was built originally up to operate in the Mediterranean and worldwide. So it's a faster ship, probably more comfort on board, of comfort and service. But again, small operation, agile, and like here, we see whales, we put boats in the water, and we can go out. So that's a signature of our operation. We are agile for that. So Hebridean Sky, I would say, if you want to spend probably more time on the ship and have a bit more of a luxury or the service of a higher standard, might be the right ship for you. And then the pride of the fleet, the ship that we built. So me and other people from the operations department, we've been involved in this project for the last 3 years already. Since the first draft, we designed the ship built for purpose. So this is Magellan Explorer, the ship that our A21 built to operate in Antarctica. It's a beautiful ship combining. It gets a combination from both Ocean Nova and Hebridean Sky. So you get the strength from Ocean Nova, the size and the speed from Hebridean Sky. So it's also built for 100. We use it for 70 for the flight cruise. And when we do longer trips, we might take more people. But very comfortable. The service, it's an improvement on this one. It's state of the art in most of the areas of the ship. You can see the open bow. We can go and check out while from the bow. We have an open deck. We have balconies, cabins with balconies. We have big lounge dining rooms, presentation rooms. So it's really a mix between Ocean Nova and Hebridean Sky, a ship built for purpose. And it already operated the last Antarctic season. She did great, and we can't wait to get on board Magellan Explorer again and head south and explore Antarctica.
Cool. Thank you, Mariana. So bottom line, we operate small ships, up to around 70 people. Our airplanes bring also around roughly that same amount of passengers, which allows us to, do landings at once, since, tourist operations in Antarctica only allow up to 100 people at one time. So that gives us a leverage in comparison to other companies that have to do, 2 or 3 disembarkations every day, and therefore you would have to wait. But in our case, it's just one go and everyone gets to do that. So now for the questions, we did get some questions from our attendees. And one of the first one would be, how does the booking process work for our solo travelers who want to share a cabin? Maybe Reno, you could help me out with that one.
Yeah, it's actually very simple. Whether you're booking through maybe an agent or you're contacting a booking agent, it's a very simple process. All you need to do is find the itinerary that you want and some dates, and it's a very simple request. And we would put you in we look at the availability, and we try to match you with another solo traveler. As simple as that.
Perfect. And also asking about our South Georgia and Falkland trips. You know, how many, when are those scheduled, our South Georgia and Falkland trips?
We have a couple itineraries that are in early season. So we have a combination of the three I mentioned, but also the Antarctic and South Georgia. That will be in early season, some as early as in October, into roughly about mid-November. And then again, towards the latter bit of this season as well in February, we do have some options for an inclusion of South Georgia.
Great. And also people are wondering, how do they get to Punta Arenas to start their trip?
Punta Arenas, yeah, that's a good question. Many international airlines, of course, are flying into Santiago, which is the capital, also the main hub of Chile. And then from there, there's a couple domestic options, carriers, that will take you further down. It's about a 4.5 hour flight from Santiago. Roughly, depending on the day, of course, there's 6 or 7 flights daily down to Punta Arenas. So it's a very popular route. It's well serviced.
Well, we do have options.
We do, yeah, exactly.
And people are also wondering, what can we eat on board? Like, what options do we give people?
What is the question again, Renato?
What options do we give people to eat on board? Like, what many options do we have?
For menus, you mean? Yeah. So on all our ships, we have similar catering on the restaurants. So we generally have minimum 3 options. So we call the 3 menus, we call the Explorer, which is meat base or steak. We call the Ocean, that it's fish. And then there's a vegetarian option always. So that's the basics. Okay. And then from that, you can expand to different buffets or different longer menu options depending on the trip. But there's always at least 3 options. And also people can sign in when they sign for the trips. I know this in the questionnaire, you can say if you're vegan or if you're vegetarian or any food restrictions will be addressed beforehand, and the ships are ready to facilitate whatever is needed.
Yeah. It's good to know for people with dietary needs or restrictions that they have options with us. Yes. And Mariano, maybe you could also tell us a bit more about how many landings we do per day.
Well, we aim for usually 2 landings a day. Everything once we get an operation will vary, can variate, but that's the ideal scenario because we try to find a mix of doing enough outside of the ship, but also giving people time to relax, to enjoy the trip. And then we also have presentations on board, and there's a lot of interaction with the staff, the expedition staff, the guides. These teams of 12, 14 expedition guides, these are very interesting people to talk with. So there's a mix of that. But usually we try to minimum 2 a day. It might be more, it might be less, and we might have to cruise. It depends on the conditions. Once we get down there, we are really depending on the conditions. But again, being agile and maneuverable and small gives us more chances to do the best, to take the best. Of course.
All right. And I'll just ask you guys a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. Any questions that didn't get answered, we'll send via email. So one of the last 2 questions that I wanted to run by you guys was, how do you determine which ship or which cruise? Does each ship has its own itinerary, or do all ships do all the itineraries?
Well, you guys can check that on the website later, but we have different type of trips that Renaud mentioned, the Express, the Classic Antarctica, the Polar Circle, the South Georgia, the longer trips. And most of the ships do variation of those. Magellan is the one doing the most variety with more Falklands, more South Georgia, and then the Classic and the Polar Circle trips. Hibernian Sky is doing mainly Express and Classic trips, and Ocean Nova is doing mainly Express, Classic, and Polar Circle trips. Then the exact itinerary will variate with the trip. There's no trip that is similar to the other, not even in the same ship.
Perfect. Okay, that's good to know. And
but it's the same. It would be similar, but not the same. Sorry, but just to clarify that, the experience is the same. But like we send people back home very happy.
Perfect. Okay, and to finish up with the questions, do people need particular gear, boots, jackets, etc., or is it provided by us?
That's a good question. We provide boots, very comfortable neoprene boots that are great for Antarctica, and people will receive that in Punta Arenas before heading to flying south, or on the ship if the ship is sailing down to Antarctica or to the Falklands or Georgia. There's on the website you can pre-buy before the trip jackets, for example, or other type of gear. You can also buy on board, but if you're going to fly to Antarctica, you need to be ready beforehand. So that's what is provided. You can check on the website on the souvenir, the shop, the gear shop on the website. The boots are provided by H1, then the rest is provided by the persons. And this is a company decision mainly based on feedback. Not everybody wants to be out there wearing the same jacket as everyone else. We see our clientele in a different way.
Okay, well, so those are all the questions that we're answering right now. Anything that wasn't answered, like I mentioned before, will be sent via email alongside the recorded webcast. At this point, I also want to announce the winner of the book that we were giving away. It's Birgit Eriksson. We will get in touch with you regarding, details about the delivery of this book for you. Congratulations on that. I hope you enjoy the read.
Congratulations.
Sure it's worth it. And well, at this point, I just want to thank you guys for yet another very informative and wonderful Imagine Antarctica webinar. And I want to remind you all again also about our feature trial certificate that will provide 20% savings on selected departures for this coming season. So please visit Antarctica 21 and register for that. And if you have any questions for any of us, you can write us to sales@antarctica21.com or call us to this toll-free number if you're in the USA and Canada, or you can just write us and we will get in touch with you. Thank you guys again. Thanks everyone for attending. And well, we'll hope to see you again in future webinars or all the more in Antarctica.
Yes.
I'll let you guys say your goodbyes.
Like to thank everyone as well. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Same here. Thank you everyone for joining, and hope to see you down south in Antarctica in the short future.